Okay. Namaste. My name is Amok, and welcome to my podcast. So today, I've decided to do an interview, and the guest is, as I mentioned on social media, it's Shivam Pandya, Dr. Shivam Pandya. He goes by the handle at Shivam Da. And hi, Shivam.
Hi.
So I would like to start with a little bit of your background. So I now know that you are a surgical oncology resident, but I was hoping you could give me a few details.
Yeah. I'm a surgical oncology resident, as you said, in third year. Um, I'm from Ahmedabad and born and brought up right here. Apart from, medicine, I've dabbled in a few other fields. Done, I learned French back at the age of 15. I've dabbled in writing. I had fun. I had a 3 month course of theater, and now eventually I'm back to what I love, surgery.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Yeah. And actually, that's not all that is, interesting about you. I mean, I'm sure we'll come to that, but your internet persona is actually very interesting. And I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about at that point. So,
Yes, definitely.
yeah, I was thinking maybe we could start with Matar Paneer. I went through your blog, and
Okay,
first entry, the blog that's posted to your Twitter page, actually. And the very first entry is
okay,
about how you got the news of your first attempt at NEET PG, and
yeah,
you hadn't gotten what you wanted, to put it mildly, in your own
yes,
words. And then when you came back home, and then you had, I mean, your mom had cooked your favorite food for you and things like that. And then in subsequent a few subsequent blogs, you talk about how competitive the medical field actually is, and you talk about how what it takes to succeed in that, how to handle failure, and a lot of other things. You also mentioned that your point of inspiration was Arsene Wenger, and
yeah.
after that, I mean, yeah. So you talk a lot about that, and then what you basically had to go through, how you succeeded eventually, how to handle failure, and a lot of those things. So why don't you tell me a little bit about, I mean, some of those experiences of yours, specifically in the field of medicine, and what exactly it is that takes to, you know, succeed in simpler terms. And
Mhm.
in addition to that, just one more question: what made
Yeah.
you go so hard at medicine?
Okay. So first of all, what the incident that you're talking took place way back in 2012, 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
So the non-medical people will not have an idea about it, but that was the first year that the NEET PG exam was declared.
Hmm.
Uh, Before that, the pre-PG exams used to be like there was a common all India exam, and there were I think 50% seats of all India government colleges only. So they were reserved for all India PG, and then there were every state had its own exam, every private college had its own exam, every institute of national significance like AIMS, JIPMER, Christian Medical College, St. John's, these places had their own exams. So on an average, a medical student would have to give at least 10 different exams every year.
Wow.
And that would entail like at least one exam would mean a cost of minimum 20,000, 30,000 minimum.
Wow.
Okay.
One
So the
exam.
step taken in, yeah, per exam, because see, you have to travel to that place. You have to apply for the
Oh,
exam,
okay, okay.
pay
So
the exam fees, then you have to travel, then you have to stay at least for one day, food, everything. And then sometimes you don't go alone. Your parents come with you, somebody comes with you.
yeah.
So, it was a very expensive and very cumbersome affair, because every exam that we had to give, we were like 2,000 people fighting for 5 seats.
Yeah.
So it was that bad.
Yeah.
So the step taken in 2012 was to have a common all India exam, NEET PG.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that step was obviously there was huge opposition against it and everything. So this NEET PG was the first NEET that I had given, the first pre-PG exam that I had given in 2012.
Okay.
And back then, I don't know, I was not in the right state of mind. I did not prepare well. Lot of things happened, and I had scored 10,000, 11,000 rank. And I was not getting the seat of my choice, as you said. And so I decided to take a drop. Now, to take a drop is a big thing.
Yeah.
Because when, like, I come from a non-medical family. So nobody in my family is a doctor. Okay. So it gets very difficult sometimes to explain that, I have taken a drop. I have not failed.
Yeah.
That
correct.
It's a very small difference.
True.
But
True.
it's a very significant difference.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. And the day results were declared, I was really down in the dumps that how can this happen to me?
Yeah.
And that was when my mom took me out and took me out for dinner. And then we had this talk that, I mean, we are not celebrating, we are celebrating your new beginning.
Yeah.
Whatever has happened.
Yeah.
And now you have to come back and you have to go up.
Yeah.
So that's how it all began.
Yeah.
So that's it. And regarding the second question, what it takes. So what it takes is, I would just say one word, that you have to be very bloody minded. I mean, you don't have to give up.
Yeah.
Okay. You only need to have your one goal in front of your eyes, that I want this.
Yeah.
Like I wanted surgery. I wanted a rank in top 1,000. That was my goal. I didn't know. I mean, I didn't even know that whether I will get it or not. But I wanted to give all my efforts towards that.
Yeah.
And by grace of God, it actually happened. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And actually, I had another question there. It's that, I mean, you said that what it takes to succeed, like you said, like determination, grit, and basically all of those things. But I have actually one more question with that. What made you, do all of this? What conviction did you have in mind that you had to go so hard at this field? That was one of the things that I was asking you. Why behind this?
Yeah. See, the why part is it. I mean, if you want the field that I wanted, the seat that I wanted, general surgery, I knew that I have to get a certain rank and to get a good college. So the competition is like, see, you have 95,000 people giving the exam, and you have to get within at least top 5,000 to get a good seat.
Wow.
And beyond that to get an actual good college. Okay. So that's how it goes. And if I'll tell you something else. When I first saw, means I joined these coaching classes, I went there, and till then I was still thinking, okay, I have 1 year left, I have so much of study material, I can do it. And then I saw how many people were there in that hall. There were 2,000 people in that hall. So I just calculated, there are 95,000 people in India. Everyone has the same material. Everyone has the same amount of time. Some people are sitting for 2 more years than me. What is it that is special about myself? How can I make myself separate from these 95,000? So from that, everything was born. The whole study plan, everything was born from that single thought, that I have to be different from the other 95,000. So that's how it went.
Yeah, it's a pretty big motivator. And general surgery, you wanted a seat in general surgery, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And after that, of course, your journey is pretty clear after that.
After that, I went for onco.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Let's come to that then. I've also read a lot of your stories. I think you wrote 10 stories, if I'm not wrong, about your experience
11
as a doctor.
or 12.
Yeah, something. I remember reading all of them. I just don't remember how many of those were. So let's talk a little bit about them. So could you narrate at least one story that moved you the most during your entire experience till now? Because I'm sure there are a lot of stories, a lot of cases where you kind of might have felt helpless. And I've read some of those, like patients from really underprivileged backgrounds come, and how you people handle it. It's a big part of your job. So could you tell a story about what not just a surgeon, but a doctor goes through during some of these postings?
See, one story that is really close to me was it is there in my blog. It is called Mangoes and Maggots.
Yeah, I remember that.
So
Yeah.
Mangoes and Maggots. That was the story of a woman who had come in the emergency department with maggots in the foot.
Yeah.
So maggots is basically the what hatches out from the eggs of a housefly,
Yeah.
and a wound containing maggots is like it's the dirtiest wound. It is a wound which nobody has taken care of, and most often we saw these patients. They were like lying on the roadside, drugged or totally drunk, out of their senses. Nobody is seeing them. The wounds are festering completely.
Yeah.
And then here comes this lady who has five relatives, two son, her husband, her brother, everyone, and they're lifting her and they brought her to our emergency. So I was really angry that how can you let this happen? How can you let a living person, how can five people are taking care of one person, keep the wound so dirty that they allowed it to have maggots? It was horrible.
Yeah.
So, and maggots stink like hell. They raise a huge stink. Yeah, the
Yeah.
entire casualty would be cleared out
Yeah.
when this patient comes.
Hmm.
So I cleaned it, everything, dressing. We did regular dressing. Patient developed leg contracture. The muscles contracted.
Hmm.
So I used to apply a splint daily, so that one dressing would take half an hour. I used to do it twice a day. But eventually the wound improved,
Yeah.
and she was stabilized. When she come, she was in sepsis, and 3 days later, after the surgery and with antibiotics, the
Hmm.
sepsis got resolved. She improved,
Hmm.
and when we were discharging her, just a day before, she gave me a huge bag. Like it was a huge bag and very heavy. I
Hmm.
said, "What is this?" So she opened it and she said that they were all mango farmers, and she had gotten me the first crop, their first crop, and that was in the bag.
Wow.
They were, I think, 20-25 mangoes were there, and I finished it off in one night.
Yeah, that will do to you.
So yes, and that was the first mango that we had, that I had that year, and it was my first year away from home.
Oh,
And
wow.
back home, having the first mango used to be a big thing. We used to offer it to the temple first, and then we would have it.
Yeah.
So it used to be kind of a small ritual,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I was missing in the residency.
Hmm.
So this really brought me back to home, and it really felt emotional
Yeah.
at that time. So that was one story which I really it really moved me, and it had a happy ending. So I really liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some of these stories, when I read, I mean, even I was overwhelmed with emotion. I mean, practically for people coming from such backgrounds, you people are gods for them. So you on several occasions, you literally save their lives. And
Yeah,
they
it does
recognize,
happen sometimes.
sometimes they recognize as such that, I mean, they know that they had no hopes before they came to the hospital, and then
Yes.
after you guys are done with them, they're pretty much as they were before the problem. So I mean,
Yes.
it's definitely going to be there. Now let's talk about the other end of the spectrum: arrogant people, people who may or may not know that doctors are not at fault. Sometimes it just happens, but then they still think that maybe roughing you people up will solve their problems for some reason. So do you have any anecdotes of that sort, or were you lucky?
Not really. Actually, I have been really lucky, I would say.
Nice.
This is my 6th year of residency,
Oh,
and
okay.
seventh if you count my senior residency also. Say 3 years of MS, and now in my third year of MCH.
Okay.
I
Okay.
have I have never been roughed up. Never.
Oh. Oh, nice.
So it is, I mean, it is good. I mean, I have been lucky, I feel.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I've never had any experience of the sort. But if you ask me, why does this happen is this is because the patient, when you look at the point of view of the patient, that guy is very frustrated.
Of course.
The our A typical government hospital is not designed to make things easier for the patient. I'll tell you that thing very honestly.
Yeah, it's
He
typical of
has to
government.
stand
Yeah.
in five, yeah, he has to stand in five different queues just to get the basic investigations done. Okay. and it is something that nobody can help because the volume of patients is so high that you can't help it.
Yeah.
Okay, the patient is admitted in the wards. In the wards, again, there is like one doctor and there are like 70 patients.
Yeah.
There are 2 staff nurses and 70 patients. So, you know, the satisfaction or the level of satisfaction from the service, which I feel is a basic human right at one point, but that is not present. And what happens is, after all this, the patient dies or gets complicated in something. So the entire focal point of anger is that one guy who is actually trying to do something for the patient.
Yeah.
And that's the first year resident. That's often the first year resident. Okay, he's the guy who is running everywhere. He's the guy who's taking the file to the RMO, getting it signed, getting the drug sanctioned, getting everything done. But then he becomes the focal point because you are only seeing him all the time.
Yeah, he's just
So for
visible.
you, yeah, so for the patient and the patient relatives, that first year resident represents the entire flawed system. And that's why he becomes a focal point of all anger, and that's why this happens.
Yeah.
I don't feel like, personally, if you ask me, I don't feel that any patient comes to the hospital with the intention of beating somebody up.
Of course, yeah, that wouldn't help them basically.
But yes, these are the things that happen. So sometimes I feel we have to also think from the point of view of the patient also, that okay, these things happen. Definitely we need a law to prevent such violent attacks. We need more protection. Everything is there.
Yeah.
But we also have to think that why these things are happening again and again, despite security, despite like n number of protests. Why are these things happening? That we have to introspect.
Of course,
I feel.
Yeah. And I mean, we see accusations flying around all the time that doctors charge hefty fees and then they are careless about their work. I mean, we see these allegations, not that I believe any of them, but I'm just saying that they charge hefty fees and then they're careless about it. They don't care what happens to the patient. All they care about is their money. And then now people are saying that many doctors invest in things like real estate or stocks and everything, and all they care about is money. And that is one of the reasons that a lot of these people rationalize their positions and rationalize or justify becoming violent with doctors who sometimes things are out of their control. How do you view some of these situations? Because I'm sure even if you didn't experience it yourself, I'm sure you might have seen these cases happen, right?
See, the thing is, what you are talking is true. What I have seen even on social media, whether it be on Twitter or be it on my page, what I've seen is people have this kind of attitude that, yeah, how is a doctor supposed to make money? Like a good doctor is the one who charges the least amount of fees. Like even within my relatives, I have heard that, there was this guy, he was such an excellent doctor, he used to charge only 5 rupees. Yeah, okay, but was the treatment good? So there's no comment on that. But okay, it would have been good. I'm not saying anything like that.
Okay, sorry.
But the thing is that there's a general perception that doctors are not supposed to make money because you are dealing with human life. See, this is the problem is. I have seen a lot of my colleagues also compare, our jobs with engineers itna paisa kama rahe hain, lawyers itna paisa kama rahe hain. Why should we not earn? I agree. We should also earn. I mean, we have families to run. We have families who depend on us. Everything is there. But why the general public don't see it that way is because we deal with human lives. People don't come to us because they're happy. People come to us out suffering. Right. And we are treating that suffering and we're charging that money. So in the minds of people, it's often like that they are earning from our suffering. So how are they supposed to make so much money when we are suffering? How are they happy?
Yeah, well, I mean, people do say that. People do say that. Even I've heard.
I have heard this on my face.
Wow, you say that to your face?
How are you enjoying it?
Yeah, because I mean, I couldn't imagine myself saying this to a person like a doctor of all people. But even in general, I mean, whatever you do, you get any service, you pay for it.
We pay for
Like
it. Exactly.
we're going back to the basics of any kind of transaction among people. You give something and you get something. You just, it's
You
not
give
charity.
something. Exactly.
Yeah, it's not charity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody should do charity. I'm strongly against, the free services of any kind. Like, if it
You mean from
is
government
in
or
my control,
from other people?
I would pay even the consultant who is seeing me. I would say,
Hmm.
sir, please take your fees, whatever,
Hmm.
take a minimum fees, but take something.
Yeah,
Because uh, whatever is free loses its value.
of course. Yeah,
It's a very simple world principle. If it is free, nobody cares for it.
yeah.
Okay, people come to our OPD and they ask us to write, 3 महीने का दवा लिख दो विटामिन का, 3 महीने का एसिडिटी का लिख दो, ये टॉनिक लिख दो, पाउडर लिख दो. Why? Because they're getting everything for free. Actually, it is not indicated, but
Yeah,
मिल रहा है तो ले लो. So that's how the things work. So if it is
yeah,
free, people don't value it. That's what I feel. I mean, I
yeah.
might sound to be this very crony capitalist while saying this, but it's a fact.
No. I mean, yeah, it's observable. It's observable. Whatever you get for free, you don't value. Yeah,
We don't value.
yeah, that's true. Those are, I mean, some things that are the popular notions that are present among the people about doctors and the medical profession in general. And you've done quite a good job in your blog. And as I understand, you're also trying to get your book published with some of the entries from your blog.
Yeah. So yes, I'm trying. I'm getting this book published. It's called Cuts and Bruises,
Yeah.
and it has some of my experiences of residency.
Hmm.
So one chapter which I narrated in the beginning, it is there in the book. Apart from that, there are 11 other chapters.
Yeah. So
So
is it your blog series that you had done and just that?
yeah,
Or
it is my blog series and a few more additional stories apart
yeah.
from that.
Could you narrate one of those stories? Because I've read your other blog stories, and I mean, it's
Yeah, one
fascinating what
is
you people go through. I just want to know about this more. So please just, and also maybe you could,
yes.
it would serve like an advertisement for people. I know I'm going to buy your book, but could you entice
Thanks a
others,
lot.
please?
Yes. So one story that we already heard was this thing, maggots
Maggots
and
and
mangoes,
mangoes. Yeah.
mangoes and mangoes. So another one which is really close to me was, yeah, it is it's of this guy. What is the name? The name was Provoked Pancreas. The name of the story is
Oh,
Provoked Pancreas.
yeah. I remember reading this. Yeah,
And
it's interesting. Yeah.
so this was the story of this patient had come to my OPD, severe pain in abdomen,
Hmm.
and he was a chronic alcoholic. Since 20 years or something, he was taking alcohol daily,
Hmm.
and finally his pancreas said, enough, you are dead. So the pancreas got angry. See, in surgery we have this saying that don't mess with the pancreas. And this guy had taken alcohol daily for 20 years. His pancreas had eventually given up, had gotten inflamed. So he was in acute pancreatitis and it was going towards sepsis. So he came to us and we arranged the drug. The drug for it was very expensive.
Hmm.
So we tried to get it free from the superintendent, the RMO. Fortunately, everybody complied with us and they listened to us and signed everything. We got it for free. The patient got treated. He was going home. And then he came back again for another surgery because that inflamed pancreas had a collected fluid inside it, which had to be drained. So he came back, and that was my first. That became my first procedure of that kind. It was called cystogastrostomy. So that was my first cystogastrostomy that way. And that patient went back home. He's still alive,
Yeah.
and he had given up on alcohol.
Yeah.
So that was a story, and it was pretty inspiring, because that guy had like 2 kids, 5-year, 6-year-old, and the wife was illiterate. The wife made the husband give up
Quit
alcohol.
alcohol. Yeah.
She said to me, "Saab, I will take care. मैं ध्यान रखूंगी ये कभी दारू को touch ना करे."
Yeah.
So yeah, it was one of those experiences where you feel like, okay, this guy has been given a second life.
Yeah.
and you really hope that he uses that life well.
Of course. I mean, it is literally like giving them a second life, right? I mean, if you're, say, something like you
It
said,
does.
like you
At
never
times it does
touch the
feel like
pancreas, that means it's such a vital organ. And if that's giving you trouble
yeah,
and you
it's a
still
vital
live through
organ,
it,
and
it's a miracle. I mean, there's no other thing that I can say for that guy. Of course, I mean, for you guys it's a procedure, so I don't
definitely,
know.
yeah,
Yeah. And
definitely.
just to be clear, I'm not drinking alcohol, I'm just having thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you happen to mention a lot of in a lot of your stories, you the crowd that you usually talk about are underprivileged. Now there's one more crowd of people, not exactly underprivileged, but who are kind of a pain for you. And those people, actually, they've been in vogue for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. Those people are the people who peddle pseudoscience, especially in the medical field. There's a lot of people who do that. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying all of those people are peddling pseudoscience, but a lot of it is pseudoscience. Have you ever had experiences where people come to you with, patients come to you with ideas like this, which have been put them into their heads by some other people who just don't know anything about medicine, but they just say that I've heard this, drink this kada and it will be okay, take
Daily,
this and it will be okay, and then this worsens the problem. Have you had any cases like that?
daily,
Oh wow.
daily.
Yeah, I mean,
So see, what happens is, in India, there is a doctor in every household. Okay, they may or may not have a degree, but they are doctors. So
yeah, those kind of
every household has a doctor. No, no, no. Like, we have patients with cancer, and I've heard people say to my face, you should not eat sugar. I said, why? Because cancer cells feed on sugar. No, it doesn't work like that. So there was this guy who was peddling all this nonsense on my page, and then he sent me a link. See, this is called Warburg effect. I said, dude, I am studying Warburg effect. It is not like that. It didn't listen. But then, yeah, apart from that, there are so many patients. Every OPD I'm seeing patients, some, like, especially in my field. See, cancer is a disease which, when you have it, a person will lose all his will, all his hope. And it is like a dubte ko tinke ka sahara, and he will take up anything that offers him hope.
yeah.
The problem with the human tendency is, as such, what I have seen over at least the past 3 years of being in Cancer Institute, is that we do not we don't we want to have fun, but we don't want to get its result. I mean, we don't want to be punished for it. We want to have fun, we want to enjoy without any consequences.
I don't know what right.
People want to eat tobacco, pan masala, want to smoke as many cigarettes as they want. They don't want cancer. If they have cancer, they want it to be treated without surgery, without chemo, without radiation.
Wow.
Okay. If they decide to undergo surgery, they want to have perfect oral function, no complication, which is not actually, no pain. It is not actually possible. When you're operating, there is bound to have some or the other problem in that.
Yeah.
So people want a life without consequence. So when these guys get cancer, they go for the path of least resistance. A guy will say, okay, go to this homeopathy, Ayurvedi, and they will give you these many drugs and you will feel better. So the person feels better because some drugs, you feel better by the placebo effect. You are okay, I'm feeling good. Suddenly one day you will come back to the hospital with a very huge advanced disease, cannot be operated, cannot be radiated, and you die.
Wow.
So this happens, and
Yeah.
this I've seen numerous times, not once. I've seen operable patients become metastatic, stage 4, from stage 1 to stage 4, 6 months,
Wow.
and 1 month later they are dead. You can't help it. I used to be frustrated initially, but then eventually I decided, okay, I can't help it.
Yeah. I mean, especially now that I think of it, especially people who deal with cancer, quite people like you and oncologists, other oncologists, they might be dealing with a lot of patient deaths, right?
Yeah.
does it affect? I mean, of course, it does affect people personally, but I mean, how do people
Me,
stay positive in a way? Because you're going to have patients eventually who die. I mean, sometimes it's just inevitable, and then you have to get over it because you have to come to work next day, right? How do people manage that? I've been curious about this a lot.
see, patient death, patient complications, even surgery, you have to detach yourself from that whole process.
Hmm.
You have to be attached enough, but you have to still be detached. Like, I think once we talked about it, oil on water principle.
Yeah.
The oil has to be on the water, but it has to be separate from it.
Yes.
It cannot be disturbed by what is going below its surface.
Yes.
So that's how that's how I live. I inform a death of a patient and then I have to go to a party. I go because I can't be involved. I can't be involved with them. If I do, I'll go crazy.
Of course.
Anybody would go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I have had days where I have informed 4 deaths before the start of OPD. From 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., I once in my night duty, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., I informed 4 deaths. I filled 4 death summaries. And then I started my day. So that happens. That happens. You get used to it. You really get used to it. I mean, 1 year of residency, things don't touch you anymore. It's all mechanical after one point of time.
Yeah. I mean, practically, you all people are like J. Asthanas for me. I mean, it's being that level of disconnected. I mean, yeah. I mean, even
No,
I'm
it is
a very
needed.
sentimental
Otherwise,
person, but I still get involved. If I'm talking to someone just once or twice, it's okay. But if I'm treating someone, I'm just saying, if I spend that much time with
yeah.
someone, it's natural to develop a sort of bond or
You
relationship.
you have to get involved. You have to take care of them as you have to do everything you can for them.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not saying detachment doesn't mean that you say, okay, chuck it, let them do whatever they want, marte marne do jeete. That is not
Of course, not
detachment I'm
that.
talking about.
Yeah, I understand.
You have to be there all the
Hmm.
through, but you cannot let it affect your mind.
Yeah, objectivity. Basically,
You
you preserve
you
objectivity.
have to be very objective. This
Yeah.
is what is happening. This is what
Hmm.
I'm supposed to do. My role is not to be their comforter.
Yeah.
My role is to try and save the patient
Hmm.
and try my everything to save them. My role is not to give them mental support and all. If I do
Hmm.
everything like that, I'll go crazy.
Yeah, of
I'll go
course.
mad.
Of course. Of course. Yeah.
So you have to keep that level of detachment, that balance you have to keep.
Yeah.
And you learn, I mean, in 1 year of residency, everybody learns to have that kind of balance. It comes with the description of job.
Yeah. Yeah, this is sort of a detour in the initial conversation that we were having about like medicine versus pseudoscience. I mean,
Hmm.
I was fascinated about how doctors would react to something that was in the news very recently, that now Ayurvedic doctors will now be allowed to do surgeries. I think that's the new development that we're hearing about. And
Hmm.
uh, there's a lot of talk about that, especially in the hashtag med Twitter, because a lot of doctors were pushing back against this, and I completely understand why. Because you people are actually trained in surgery, because this MBBS it does have I mean, Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor
Yeah,
of
we do.
Surgery, so you're formally trained in it. And then when you see people who are trained in Ayurveda, I'm not denigrating Ayurveda, it certainly has its merits, I don't know, but if they're not explicitly trained in surgery like you are formally, and then they're eventually allowed to do surgery, then if all goes well, then all goes well, no problem. But who takes responsibility for the failures? I mean, they're not trained.
Very true. See, the thing is, a lot of people read the whole outreach incorrectly because if you're not aware, I also run another Facebook page. It's called
Hmm.
Surgery Memes for Anesthetized Teens. I just started it years back and
Okay.
it was inactive. And then I made a few memes which got
Hmm.
really viral
Hmm.
around this time last week.
Hmm.
And one of the memes was shared by a page called Ayurveda Doctors. And then
Hmm.
they started targeting me.
Hmm. Oh.
Okay. So I was able, and what I'm seeing is message that is going across is modern doctors are opposing the whole thing because they're seeing this as a competition. Like if Ayurveda surgeons start performing general surgery or modern surgery procedures, then it's a competition for them. Might be.
You're talking about how
Personally,
people are reading the outrage wrongly, right?
how
Because
people
you
are
preached
reading
for
the
a while.
whole outrage by the allopathic doctors, the modern
Yeah.
medicine doctors.
Yeah, you kind of
So
glitched
this is
up.
how people are reading. Huh. So the issue is not that. I mean, for me personally, the issue is that as you said, who will take responsibility?
Hmm.
The issue is of the mismanagement of a patient.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
Now a patient doesn't know. Patient will only see the
Results.
prefix doctor. He will see the suffix MS, and then that's all.
Yeah. Oh,
And then he will
makes
go,
sense.
and then he'll be operated. He'll be, if he's complicated, then he'll
Hmm.
come back to us mostly,
Yeah.
and then he'll come back to us. It will be a complicated case. Again, the
Hmm.
prognosis will not be good. What could
Hmm.
have been a very simple surgery gets really, really, really messed up. So, uh, what I'm the all the outrage that I have is from the point of view of a patient. Even
Hmm.
most of the tweets that you would have seen, they were all patient experiences. Like
Yeah.
there was an
So,
internal medicine, there is an internal medicine guy who wrote how there were steroids in those capsules, those Ayurvedic capsules, which messed up his patient's diabetic status, and the heavy metals that it caused the chronic renal failure.
yeah.
So all these things, they are not affecting his practice. These things are not affecting his practice.
Hmm.
He's still having the internal medicine guy still has his patients,
Hmm.
but the patient who is losing his life or his limb because of
Hmm.
such practice,
Hmm.
he is losing everything. So what we are outraging at
Yeah.
times, I feel, is on behalf of the unknown patient.
Yeah.
So that's what the thinking is. The
Yeah.
message that is going across is that we are outraging because we are seeing it as a threat to our practice, and we're seeing it as a competition. There is nothing like that.
Yeah.
India
Makes
has
sense. Yeah.
India has a 1 billion people, 1 billion people, 1 billion potential patients.
Yeah.
You can never have a cramped competition with this bigger caseload. It is
Correct.
impossible.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. That is true. That's
So
true.
yeah, that's what. And again, I have all the respect for every field. I
Hmm.
have all the respect for Ayurveda, all the respect for homeopathy. I am on homeopathic medication myself for my skin ailment. But again, because it is effective in this condition, and that's what I'm saying. Every field has its own limitation, and they should respect the limitation. Now,
Hmm.
if Ayurveda has its use in skin ailments or in chronic lung diseases,
Hmm.
continue with that.
Yeah.
Why do you want to also give diclo and PCM, and why do you want to also do incision and drainage and all that stuff? Why?
Yeah.
So
True.
that's
True.
what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Yeah.
That is
And
my point.
just a personal anecdote from my side. I mean, not that I know any of this stuff in detail, but back when I was in school, we used to live in an apartment, and where our neighbor, uh, he had a degree in Ayurvedic sciences, BAMS, I think it's called. Yeah. So he was working in Pune. We stayed in Nanded actually. So he was in Pune working under some established practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine, and he used to come to Nanded every weekend. It's like a 12-hour journey. And on the weekends, he used to see a lot of people, lot of patients in his house, neighboring house.
Hmm.
And I've seen, okay, because I was also living there when he was doing that degree, BAMS. So I don't know from where, but he was not there. I know exactly how many people used to come to his house, which was zero. They didn't have any visitors. This is not that kind of family. But once he started his
Okay.
practice on Saturdays and Sundays, the entire apartment staircase used to be crammed with patients for 2 days. Our movement was restricted, and that is the volume of people that come to see Ayurvedic patients, Ayurvedic doctors.
Yeah,
So I don't
doctors.
understand, at least at my level, I don't understand why people are saying that Ayurvedic people are a competition. I mean, they're taking up say they're creating competition for allopathic doctors or like traditional modern medicine doctors, and modern medicine doctors are angry about it. I don't understand this, because Ayurvedic doctors, either way, they have a huge patient intake, group. People come to them anyway. So why would they need to do these things? Why would allopathic doctors need to do these things in order to keep them at bay? I don't understand this. Like I said, I don't understand technicalities, but this is just like an anecdote that I have for myself. So that is one of the things. You had something to say?
No, that's what I'm saying. See, every field has its scope. Every practitioner will have his patients if he's good.
Yeah.
Okay. But when one field you try to enter the another field, like as surgeons, we understand radiology. But we don't go and we report the CT scans. That's the job of a radiologist, because he's been doing it for so many years.
Correct.
As a surgeon, I can see a CT scan, I can give a diagnosis, I have some basic idea. But I cannot go and I cannot give the CT report. I cannot supersede the radiologist.
Yeah.
I can't say that, okay, I know this, so you cannot write it. I have a bridge course in radiology. I should be giving this report. I can't say that.
Of course. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Every branch should respect it. I know that I know the medication of hypertension and diabetes, but I don't go and treat hypertension and diabetes. I don't supersede my internal medicine guys.
Correct.
Because they have been doing it for 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So the specialization
every field
basically
has its limit. That's the whole point of specialization. Ayurveda has its limits, has its uses, should stay there. We should stay there.
Correct.
I don't know why the whole conflict is there.
Yeah. And this is we discussed about this, but there's one more aspect of this, okay, and this just completely beats my mind for some reason. I don't understand this at all. Whenever you question some people, I'm not saying all people who advocate for Ayurveda, specifically Ayurveda, okay. So they say that Ayurveda is the most scientific medicine there is. It has a solution for everything, and modern medicine people are fooling others.
And everyone would say that other guy is fooling.
Yeah, it's not just trolls, okay. Say people who
serious people.
Yeah, serious people do this, and it's inexplicable. I don't understand. So if your medicine is that good, shouldn't you be bothered with proving it to the entire world?
That's what I'm saying. That is the whole point now. And it is also good. It is good, but you can't say that the other guy is fooling everyone. We are the best. Nobody says that.
Yeah,
modern medicine has progressed so far. See, modern medicine, I feel, has progressed so far because it is research based.
Yes.
The surgery textbooks that I read in my UG, which was in 2011, final year, they are outdated now. And it is 2020. In 9 years, they are outdated. Wow. I cannot refer to them anymore. So that's the pace of development which is happening.
Of course.
The oncology textbook that I'm reading now has some studies whose result, the textbook was published in 2018. So there are some studies whose results are being published this year. So that textbook, the latest edition, is already outdated.
Wow.
So this is the pace of development. This is the pace of research which is happening.
Yeah.
In the face of this, you cannot say that we have been doing the same thing for 3,000 years and it is working. It's not working. The average lifespan has increased now over the years.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But okay, I feel eventually it's all just most of these things are outrageous, are reserved for the internet, for the social media.
Yeah, it's basically just cloud hunting. I don't know. Yeah.
Out in the real world, nothing of the sort matters. If you are good, patients will come to you irrespective of your qualification.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. There is no other bottom line when it comes to the practice.
Yeah, of course. And practice is one thing. Of course, you people would, whoever does the best, they get the most patients, like you said. It's just the way it works. But specifically about studies, I think you and I had this discussion on social media somewhere, or maybe some other doctors that I interact with. It is that whatever specific branch of medicine that you are, modern medicine, Ayurveda, homeopathy, whatever, if you think that your specific branch of medicine has the answer to certain things, then shouldn't you be bothered with doing studies on that, publishing the results, and putting it out there, doing like double blind peer reviewed research that no one can refute, at least without any new evidence? Shouldn't that be something that people are bothered with? And this is now particularly talking about Ayurveda people. They said, many people say that it's not just treatment based, it's also prevention based. So they also do the preventive thing. And
Yeah.
I've seen people make like outlandish claims about it. So like, I don't even
No, that's
understand
true to
how
an
those
extent.
work. But I mean, when
It
we
is,
ask
it is
where
true.
is it coming from, then they just say it's written in this book and it here, and we just believe it. I'm just saying, you believe it. That's not the way science works. This has been my complaint for a long time.
No, see, what the thing is that in India, anecdotal evidence is above everything else. One person is saying this, it represents the entire class. It represents everybody. That's how it works. But again, I'll agree to it that Ayurveda, yoga, these have a very good preventive role when it comes to hypertension, diabetes, and other lifestyle disorders. Definitely, they have.
Yeah.
But
Certainly, yeah.
when you have diabetes, you have to take insulin, you have to take OH, the oral hypoglycemic drugs, whatever. You have to have it. Because otherwise the sugars will go out of control. You will end up in diabetic ketoacidosis. You will end up with limb gangrene. These things will happen because the body doesn't obey the laws of the body doesn't recognize which medicine system is treating it. The body will only recognize the disease.
Correct. Yeah.
So, okay, happens.
Yeah. And connected to this, actually, now there's one more like big monster coming now. It's we have been seeing this pandemic for the last almost a year now. And now there are many companies who have been working on the vaccine for a long time, and now we are hearing that the vaccine will soon be available in a lot of places, a lot of countries. And as it happens with every vaccine, we have anti-vaxxers. And I feel the need to talk about this right now because there are prominent handlers, and some of them are even based in science. I won't name any names, but I know a few people who work in science, and they're still claiming that these vaccines will not work, and these are just being made by these companies, Pfizer and all of that, to make money, and these are not going to work, so don't take them.
Okay.
Do you have anything to say about this?
Not really. See, honestly speaking, I'm not an expert when it comes to infectious diseases and all. But what I'm just saying is
from the perspective
that
of the same thing, that you're so skeptical of science that you're actively saying don't trust them, even though they have studies, because they've managed the studies.
True. See, vaccinations and all, the anti-vaxxer movement has been going on since a very long time.
Yeah.
We have heard that, oral polio vaccine will cause you these number of side effects. It causes autism. Yes, there have been some incidences, but again, as I said, anecdotal evidence is always superior in the eyes of the people compared to anything else. Like you can have a case series, you can have a cohort study, you can have a meta-analysis. But if your neighbor comes and says, "Dekho, mere bete ke saath aisa ho gaya," you will believe the neighbor more than anyone else. So that's how things work. That's how things work in real life. When it comes to vaccines against the coronavirus, once again, we personally, I'm in a bit of a balanced mode. I'm sure that the vaccines are not going to give 100% protection. I'm sure, but I'm also sure that they are not total failures.
Fair enough. Yeah.
My mind is somewhere in the middle, and the trials are going on. Let them see how much. Let the trial results come out.
Yeah.
And as I said, that's how modern medicine works.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how modern medicine works. You have you have a drug. You don't release it to the unsuspecting public. You put it through trials.
Yeah.
After trials, you have a phase 4 study where it is the post release you study from the patients.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
till there that these trials are going on.
Hmm.
So let it come out. Let's see what happens, and then we can all decide about it.
Yeah.
But again, no, I mean, I don't see the need of spreading that havoc unnecessarily. That
Yeah.
even the
Exactly.
vaccines will be useless and the virus will consume us all eventually. I don't see the point of that.
Yeah.
It
I
is
mean,
just like spreading chaos.
I was thinking. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, and it's specifically bothers me because these are prominent handles. Okay, so they have sway over. I mean, I wouldn't say sway. At least they make impressions on a lot of people in
True.
the range of like hundreds of thousands of people once
True.
they're on social media. And
So everyone is
this
entitled to their opinions, I feel, eventually.
of
But
course,
then
but
if you
this is
have a
not
way
literary
over,
criticism that we're talking about, right? This is science. You don't get to have any opinion in of course you get to have an opinion, but you don't get to claim that it's a correct opinion. If evidence
very
proves
true.
you wrong, then you're wrong. And this is especially because I mean, even I'm from a science background, so I mean, this this stuff actually does bother me. And this might sound like a broken record, but the problem is that if you're saying that because you don't trust a few corporations, they want to mint money and all of those arguments, because you don't trust them, you're actively going to tell people outright lies or incorrect things about these things. And especially when you
Forget.
don't even the people lie,
For,
like you said, they spread autism, polio vaccine spread autism. And then these again, these COVID vaccines, that people are saying that it's nothing, it's a placebo, and people are just taking it. And either way people are recovering, so the recovery rate is very high. So these 94.5 and 95% numbers are, there's just people who are recovering anyway, and it's not because of the vaccine. That's what people are saying. This
you
is one
are
of the things
saying you are
we read.
talking about being you're talking about being anti-vaxxer. I've seen people who are anti-virus. I mean, they are still denying the existence of the virus.
Oh yeah, yeah. Those movements are
I have seen
conspiracy
those.
theorists. Yeah.
It's a different level, that
Yeah.
virus is a conspiracy by the government to control our behavior.
Oh, man.
And I'm not kidding. Okay, I've seen this on Twitter. The
Yeah.
mask is a symbol of that people should shut up. The temperature gun is the government normalizing shooting your head. I have
Oh
heard
my
this. I have
God.
seen this. I'm not kidding. So
Yeah. I mean,
people are
I
crazy.
saw some of this being spoken about in some of the podcasts and news networks that I follow, but then I just zone out and I keep myself away from that. I mean, it just drives me up the wall. I don't know, but yeah, this is the case anyway. So that like, people have weird opinions about science, and because it is about medicine specifically, that's why I have these many questions, because it's directly to do with people's lives. It's not something to be trifled with. And
Yeah.
yeah, that brings me to something that's more interesting and a little removed from your particular subject, but still, if you remember, a few months back we had a famous episode about this modernity being a problematic force in the world, specifically when it comes to medicine as well, but even in general. Like modern medicine is a problem,
Hmm.
people say. And then people like started saying that modernity itself is a problem.
Hmm.
How do you
True.
deal with people who do like this? Because I'm sure you've seen such people in real life as well. How do you deal with such people?
No, I avoid
How do you
them.
convince? No, I mean, you can avoid them, but the thing is, if such a person is your patient, what do you do?
I give them option. Then it's on them. See, after all this time, after at least 6 years of residency, what I have
Mm,
seen is that you cannot change the way a patient thinks. You
yeah.
have to give them all options. You have to explain them all the options. And then I have seen a patient who hemoglobin of 3. He was brought on a stretcher with
Mm,
bleeding from the anal cavity, the anal canal,
mm,
and he was severe ongoing bleeding was there. I had to catheterize the patient to monitor the urine output. I catheterized. He outrightly refused catheterization, and he took discharge. I said, I want to go home. I said, तुम मर जाओगे घर जाते जाते. You will die. He said, no, I still want to go home. For the absence of catheterization, he ran away from the hospital. So
Wow.
you can't convince everybody. You can't convince everybody in the world that my way is the right way. You can only give them options. You can say, see, boy, this is good for you. This is good according to my knowledge, according to the knowledge of my seniors, according to the world. But you do what you want. So if he does what he wants, if he wants to go away, if he wants to have the gaon ka medicine, he will go. You can't stop him. And if he wants to stay, and if there is magic in your words, he will stay. So that's how it works. You can't convince everyone.
Yeah.
You have to just let them be.
Yeah.
So if I meet such people in real life and they are not my patients, I ignore. If they are my patients, I try to convince. If they are affecting me directly, I tell them to stay out of my life.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good
So,
policy.
that's how it works.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was in 10th, everyone faces this question to go for math or to go for biology. And personally, the people who go for the math and biology thing, I think those are like superhuman people, or they just don't know anything.
Dude, I was one of those.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they do that, but either way. So it was basically a decision between medicine and engineering. And one of the things is, we just started talking among our friends, and someone actually raised an issue like this, that doctors, a lot of the time, doctors have to convince the patient to do something, and they may not always agree. And at that time, I was very argumentative. So I knew that if I cannot convince a patient, I'll strong arm him. I'll do whatever to get my way, and this is just not the way to go. So that was one of the things that I consciously thought and avoided medicine. I just cannot, because at least at that point I could not. Now I don't even know. So because I don't have to deal with people for a living. So I mean, I guess I'm probably just shielded.
You have to come to an acceptance at one point that you can't change everyone.
Yeah.
You can't change everyone. You have to do what you're good at, and that's all.
Yeah, that makes sense. Correct. Yeah, and now I think we're done with the medical part of the podcast. Now I just wanted to talk about some other stuff, and you know what the other stuff is just things that we talk about all the time. Not just us, a lot of people. So it's about one thing that I see you getting into arguments on social media is that people often see your profile on social media. They see one tweet of yours and they go to your profile. They see you're a doctor, and then they give out this statement as if like they're the president of India or something, that this is a quote unquote right-wing doctor, and I don't know how he or she would treat patients, or you would treat patients. So I would just not go to this person.
Yeah,
so, I mean, people say that. I mean, people looking at your tweets, I've seen so many times. We've discussed about this. There's so many times people say that you are a extremist, right-wing, fascist doctor, and you would treat a left-wing patient or a patient that you don't like badly. How do you respond to them? I know, but I just want people who are listening to this podcast, I want them to know how you respond to them, because this is a very unique way in which you handle them. I just ignore, but you do something very interesting. I just wanted to say that.
No. I see. First of all, I'll tell you one thing very important. Once told it before also. It is oil on water. You have to be like that even on social media. You have to be very thick-skinned.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah. So the way I think what I see is that Twitter is full of virtual lynch mobs, and they try to corner you and they try to attack you. Freedom of speech and the dignity of talk and everything of that is just hypothetical for them. Freedom of speech exists for them as long as you are agreeing to what they want to say. If you say anything they don't agree with, they will be more fascist than probably Mussolini, I think. So coming back to my point, yeah, you have to be thick-skinned. You don't have
Yeah.
to let these people get to you.
Yeah.
Actually, it happened with me today, since yesterday night again.
Yeah. I
Some
saw you say
account
that.
started and it just went on and on and on, and I don't know. I had to actually delete the tweet because I didn't want unnecessarily thras and
Yeah.
unnecessary
Of course.
clogging of my notifications. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, what happens is, these people, it they mirror or they reflect their thoughts on you.
Yeah.
They
Projection,
project
I
their
think it's
thoughts on
called.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is, yeah, it is called projection. I was
Hmm.
just missing that word. Yeah, projection. They
Hmm.
project their thoughts on you.
Hmm.
They project the way they think on you.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. That's why I keep on saying that forget me. If a so-called Sangi patient comes to you, I
Hmm.
will be scared for his health, because
Yeah. Yeah.
I never thought that somebody can even think of something like this.
Yeah.
Not only that you thought, you believed that I'm doing, because this thing is ingrained in your brain. So some way you will find a way to justify it.
Yeah.
I remember 3 years ago, I was running a fairly popular page on Facebook. That was the golden era of Facebook pages,
Hmm.
talking of
Hmm.
2017.
Hmm.
So
That's when I
it
quit
was a
Facebook.
fairly popular right-wing page, and I just made this off-the-hand comment that
Hmm.
if tomorrow somebody attacks and kills Arnab Goswami,
Hmm.
these liberal gang will be the first to celebrate. And see what happened in 2020.
Exactly the same thing happened. Yeah. I mean, it didn't
Exactly the
die, but
same thing
yeah.
happened. They were celebrating.
Hmm.
I had
Yeah.
said 3 years ago that if this thing happens, they will actually go on and write that he was not even a journalist. So we don't
Yeah.
have to feel sad for him.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in 2020.
Yeah.
The These people, they project their own beliefs on you. So it doesn't affect me personally,
Hmm.
because I know that they are just projecting their own beliefs. If
Yeah.
they meet me face to face, I will just laugh them off. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, face to face.
Anyone with a modicum of sense will laugh off these allegations.
Yeah.
But it works on social media because it looks very sensational.
Yeah. True. True. Of course. Yeah. But
One of the guys, he's also a doctor. He's in this group of labeling everyone a fascist and an anti-doctor. He's actually my colleague,
uh,
and I know him
yeah. Yeah.
personally.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah. 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 I think I know who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
so I know him personally.
Hmm.
I'm like, dude, you know me. Your colleague, he works with me. You are my batchmate.
Hmm.
I mean, we have each other's number. We have talked on WhatsApp,
Hmm.
and now we are talking all this BS on Twitter. I mean, what is this going on? But again, it happens. See, so,
Yeah.
because it looks very sensational on social media, so you will put it.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah. I mean, politics,
That's what
discussing
the
politics
entire,
on
this
social media
can.
has killed many friendships. I don't like it. Even for me, I practically lost a few friends because of social media.
And that's why my Facebook account is no. I was lucky that way, because my really close friends, we don't talk politics with each other, and when we
Yeah.
do, we all we actually we don't talk. I don't remember talking politics with my friends ever.
Hmm. Hmm. That's
Okay.
a good practice.
And the friends I made on social media, like
Hmm.
friendships made on social media, can be broken on social media. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Friendships made in
we
real
know
life,
that. Yeah.
friendships made in real life stay in real
Staying
life.
correct. True. True.
It's
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
It's okay with me. And again, but yeah, what you said is very true. And there is a reason that I've consciously depoliticized my Facebook.
Hmm.
I no longer I write any scathing political comments,
Hmm.
except sometimes when I really lose control. But
Yeah. All of those
it
days.
is like 10% of what it was once upon a time.
Oh.
So my Facebook account is totally normie, as they say,
Hmm.
and my Twitter is different.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, I just have a cursory Facebook account just to let people know that I'm alive. I'm not active at all. And Twitter, of course, we all know how Twitter works. It's super fast and all of that. Yeah. And just
Yeah.
one more thing, you in your recent blog that you're publishing today, uh, I went through that blog. I read it. You speak
Okay.
about the woke culture and how they try to cancel people off, and then you cited the example of Major General G.D. Bakshi about his
Yeah.
Vistara Airlines incident and all of that.
The woke terror.
Yeah,
That was the
woke terror,
blog.
exactly. So yeah,
The woke
the
terror.
word you used is woke terror, and I remember
Yes.
thinking, this is in the afternoon, I think, when you shared, I read it immediately. So
Mhm.
I remember that this, in this context, just correct me if I'm wrong, my interpretation of this woke terror phrase, uh, I don't think you mean it in the sense of like Islamic terror or Nakshal terror.
No.
I think you
No, no,
mean
no,
it.
no, no, no,
Of
no.
course, I'm saying, I mean, even as a metaphor, I don't think you're relating to that terror. What I think you're relating to is the Red Terror or the Jacobin terror, those kinds of
See,
terrors. Because the thing is,
yeah.
these people are, we often think that establishment is the government, but with the I agree here with uh, Rahul Roshan of India, and he says that the government was never the establishment. The
It is never the
establishment,
establishment.
yeah, the government, the establishment is that which you cannot change. You can
Yes.
change the government by voting the other way, but what you cannot
True.
change is the people who just sit on top and then they just keep saying, broadcasting their opinions, and those are
True.
the people that can inspire such kind of terror. Those are the people who are
Yes.
sitting on top of organizations, who can just let people go for something, some inane comment they made 50 years back on some other thing. That's why I think that woke terror is something like this Jacobin terror. People live in fear of the authority of the establishment.
Of the
How would you
establishment.
explain that for people who have not read the blog? How would you
See,
explain
the
this whole context?
the woke terror, the phrase that I framed, it had a few meanings. One of which, of course, you described. The other one was
Hmm.
uh, like they work as a bully.
Yeah. Yep.
These
Yep.
people, they work as a bully.
Hmm.
Okay, what happened with Air Vistara? What happened with
Hmm.
Air Vistara?
Hmm.
They shared a pic. They shared a pic of Major General G.D. Bakshi,
Hmm.
and then there was a deluge of tweets and very strong opinions from big handles,
Hmm.
from media houses,
Yeah.
that how can Vistara share the image of what was his crime? His crime was that he appears in Republic TV as a panelist.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, this guy has worked in the army. He
Yeah.
was in the Kargil war.
Hmm.
You forget all that, and you pour hate on an airlines for sharing his image because he is a panelist. He is not the owner. He is not the shareholder. He is a panelist in a news house which you don't like. Okay, and you force that airlines to take down that picture, and then
They
you
actually
sit down
did.
and claim.
That's the worst
They
part. They
they did.
actually
That's what I'm
did.
saying. They did. They did. And on a very small level, it is what happens with people like me. It is what happens with a lot of others who,
Hmm.
whom these people are trying to get cancelled
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
political opinions.
Hmm.
This what happened yesterday was a very small incident. Some of tweets of mine,
Hmm.
they were. I mean, I was really harassed by a very strong group of leftists for a few days non-stop
Hmm. Hmm.
over some very silly comment. But
Hmm.
see, these things happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their only aim was to bully me into submission.
Hmm.
Okay, and somehow I did not get bullied. I bullied them back a
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
happened.
If I
But
remember,
again, that's what just happened.
your bio used to be like the right wing troll your friends warn you about or something, right? That's
Yeah.
what your
So
bio
that was
used
the
to be.
whole issue of, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Comma
yeah.
was
Yeah. I
missing and
remember
I
that.
misinterpreted it wrong way.
Yeah. 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 I remember that. Yeah.
So yeah. So no, what my point again is the
Hmm.
woke terror. So this
Hmm.
is the terror they want to inspire.
Hmm.
Any terrorist organization. I'm not only talking of Islamic terror. I'm talking of any terrorist organization right from the beginning of the IRA, the Irish Republic Army,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
back in the 18th century.
Hmm.
Any terrorist organization has only one aim. It is to inspire fear.
Yeah.
And by
That comes
inspiring
from
fear,
terrorists.
yes,
Yeah.
and by inspiring fear, you aim to alter the behavior of that person.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Makes
post
sense.
9/11, we saw that all the airports in the world had very different security protocols. We
Yeah.
altered our behavior because of the
Correct.
terror.
So they were
So
successful in a way.
Exactly. So that was my meaning of the word, the woke terror.
Yeah.
They want to inspire terror and they want to change us. They want to suppress the voices of those who they don't like.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah. And the most surprising part of this to me is that a few people who are not even woke. Woke is what? Like, this terminology itself is very recent. It's 2-3 years
It is very
max.
recent. I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
know about it last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very recent phenomenon, the people being called woke. I mean, we've had people who've shown signs of being woke for a long time, but this terminology is new. But the strange part, really strange part to me, is that there are some people who are self-proclaimed liberals. Okay, those people engage in the same things. If you remember, there's this chef in Dubai, Atul Kochhar. Do you remember that case?
Atul Kochhar. I know.
Yeah, yeah. So, and
Yes.
this supposedly liberal person was also supposedly right wing by that, I mean, at that time on Twitter. She was famous for that. And then
Yeah.
she endangered his job in such a way for a silly comment. I mean, he made a factual error, fair enough, but then you tagged his employer and you complained about him. He could have potentially he could have
Compel
gotten
them to.
a death penalty there. You endangered his
Yeah.
life.
And that's what they did to countless people in the Middle East this year.
Yes, yes.
And
And
there was a proper group working towards it. Group of
yeah,
Facebook, these Twitter accounts.
yeah,
There was
I
a
remember that.
Telegram or a WhatsApp group,
Hmm.
and that happened. And then
Yeah.
these guys had the balls to come out and say that we stand for the liberty and the freedom of speech and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Come
I
on,
don't
here, don't
understand
BS
this.
us.
Yeah, I mean, this is explicit channel. You can just express yourself, no problem. But the thing
No,
is,
no, no.
of course, I'm just saying, uh, this baffles me because these are self-proclaimed liberals. Okay, some of them even have written books about why they are liberals. So I don't understand this behavior on their part if they really are liberal. Now, there's an easy explanation that they're not. Because if you listen to the previous monologues that I've done on this very same podcast, I've done 2 monologues on liberty of expression. So one is actually about the Paris beheading, and then the other just talks about just talks about the history of free expression and how people fought for it. And if you read these people, whenever you say liberal, it's assumed that it's either neoliberal or the classical liberals, and these people call themselves classical liberals. And if you go by their classical liberal principles, these are anything but.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't tolerate other opinions. That's what I gather from their online behavior. And to think that these people have influence. I mean, of course, before the advent of social media, it was just these people.
Yes.
Now, when they are getting it back, they want to cancel all voices. And this is especially problematic for people like you because you never pull your punches. You never pull. I've seen you interact with a lot of these people and you never pull your punches. You give it back.
Yes.
Probably this is something you and I share. What I'm going to say is that we do not respect political correctness at all.
See, what happened is with the advent of social media, people like these lost all relevance. They lost all relevance because before this they were the only outlets of news. Okay, when you have people like Barkha Dutt or Ravesh Kumar or Sagarika Ghosh or Rajdeep, just to give out a few popular names, these guys were the sole outlet of news. Okay, the word in Hindi is like they were the thekedar of news.
Yeah.
Okay. What happened with the advent of social media is, and you are not only the outlet of news, you are also the influencer of public opinion.
Yes.
So in 1998, when when India tested its atomic bomb in Pokhran, Sagarika Ghosh wrote that this is an RSS bomb and called
I remember that piece. Yeah.
Called Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Bomb Daddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these guys were the sole proprietors of the public opinion. What happened post the advent of social media is that everybody started having an opinion. Everybody was having an opinion, but nobody could express it.
Yeah.
The only way to express in the pre-social media days were the famed letters to the editor. which never got published.
Of course. Yeah. Why would you
So
publish
with the
something critical to you, especially when you have all the editorial control?
exactly.
You don't do it.
So what with the advent of social media, what happened is everybody who had an opinion came out with the opinion,
Yeah.
and suddenly these people, they lost their relevance. So now they are fighting for their relevance.
Yeah.
And if I fight for their relevance, relevance is the only thing which is dear to them because they have a lot
Correct.
of money. I don't think that anybody is in need of money at this stage. 20 years, 25 years of top level journalism. I don't think they need money. Okay. They need power. They need the relevance back. And
Correct.
that's what they're not having. And that's what they're fighting for. So if you are fighting for something which is so basic, so essential to you, you will use all the weapons in your arsenal.
Correct.
And that's what they're doing. So all your cancel culture or supporting of the Vokes and whatever you are seeing is because that they want to fight for relevance. They don't have anything else left.
Yeah.
So that's what is happening, I think.
Yeah, I see that happening a lot. I mean, this beats my bubble, and that's why I think that voices like yours and a lot of other voices, I dare say even mine, where it's kind of important in a way because there has to be some pushback, no matter how insignificant we are in the grand scheme of things, but there have to be voices at the very least.
Definitely.
And it's huge kudos to you because you I've seen you do this for a very long time and you never pull your punches, like I mentioned, and I respect that about you. And
thank you.
It's just, I don't understand how these people just live with themselves for that particular thing. Either way,
well, they live because they don't. I personally, if you ask me, I don't think they mean it. I don't think they mean all they write.
No, I mean, it's not just about it's not just about what they mean or not. If you get cancelled because of something, now, I mean, you have, at least till now, nothing that bad has actually happened to you. But there are people who have lost their jobs. The other day, you also wrote in your blog about how people file FIRs because their feelings get hurt or something like that. Even our quote unquote our side people do that. But either way, what happens is it doesn't matter if you mean something or not when you say it or you write it, because there are people who write all sorts of nonsense. There's this one particular person who writes for the Print, I think. Yeah, Print. He wrote that if Modi ji wins even one less seat than all the seat 545, then he's a loser. That's what he wrote before the election. What nonsense is that? Can anyone really mean it? But the problem is not that. The problem is when these things have real life repercussions. If people get fired, or worse, especially if they're living in the Middle Eastern countries or something governed by not common law systems, and they get like weird or dangerous, they get into a dangerous situation, and who's responsible for that? That is why I think it's very problematic. And
definitely,
like you say in your blog, I don't see a solution.
There is no solution to it because they are fighting. It's a civilizational war on social media right now. Not every war is fought with bloodshed.
Yeah, I mean, but civilizational war is one thing. That's a battle of ideas. But here, I mean, you mentioned exactly what you're saying. It's terror, because the moment you have to alter your behavior in order to survive in that.
In order to survive, yes, it is terror.
Yeah, and
it's terror.
We don't have a solution to it. That's the scariest part. But still, people like you, people like me, we keep talking about stuff, and I especially, I'm sure you know, I'm definitely sure you know that I always yap about free speech.
What we have to do is
just step back and let people talk whatever they want to, unless they're not calling for violence or something. But till that point, people just need to get out of each other's speech. That's what I think.
See, what happens is, people, they lose control at times while writing and commenting. I'm not saying that the guy who commented and who got fired was without fault. Okay. You write that kind of a comment, and you have to know that there will be repercussions to it.
Yeah.
So you have to take care about that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, social repercussions, it's for a moment okay. So if you get fired, you probably knew what you were talking about. So if you still do it and you get fired, then it's at a point it's understandable. Even that is problematic, because there's a
Hmm.
great piece written by Bari Weiss, if you know who that is. She used to write for New York Times. She's a big shot, and she just resigned recently. And she resigned actually because of the same reasons, that she
Okay.
one of the reasons was that the cancel culture was getting too obnoxious, and she realized that this is it's not going to work as long as, I mean, she cannot work in that situation as long as this continues. So she just resigned.
True.
So that was one of the things, because it gets intolerable, especially when the state is involved. If you're fired, it's one thing, because you could just
You're
go and
fired and jailed and deported.
yeah, deported, or worse. I mean, in some countries, you get executed for saying things like this.
So
It's not new.
that's what happens.
Yeah.
If you
Either way,
it is bad.
um,
Definitely bad.
yeah, I think I've covered all things that I wanted to. It's kind of time to wrap this up. So yeah, and just one last thing. I think you have your own podcast as well, right, on YouTube?
I
And
do. I do.
yeah, just
It's the
tell us about
oncologist podcast.
that a little bit.
Yeah, it is the my podcast is the oncologist podcast,
Hmm.
and I tried. I try to interview as many doctors as possible.
Hmm.
Try to find the person behind the doctor,
Yeah.
and that's what my aim is. I so far recorded 2 episodes.
Hmm.
Planning to record a third, but then my voice gave away
Yeah.
because of Diwali, sweets,
Happens.
smoke, and the cold. So
Yeah.
my voice gave away for a while, and I'm back. So I'm hoping to record a third one very soon.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all about it.
Yeah. So I think that concludes all topics that I've thought about speaking with Shivam. And what I'll do is I'll leave the link to your podcast in the description. I'll also write the name
Okay.
of your book, Cuts and Bruises, if I'm right, right?
Cuts and bruises.
Cuts and Bruises. I'll leave that in the description. And I'll just say this, that you guys should check out his podcast as well, just to get to know what kind of people, regular people doctors are. And you should also read
Sure,
his
sure.
blog. I'll put that link in the description as well. And
Okay.
it was great to have this chat with you, Shiva. Thank you.
Thanks, yeah. Thanks a lot.
Namaste.
Okay.
If you like
Cheers.
today's podcast, please consider subscribing. Please also consider subscribing to Shivam's podcast. And I'll see you in the next episode. Namaste.